Hello everyone. Prompted by my recent purchase of the Samurai gaming mat from Tiny Wargames, I just got these two figures out and painted them to add to my collection of Samurai gaming figures. So I wanted to talk about the range that these come from in particular. These figures are from Zenit Miniatures, and they're designed for a game called Kenzai, which is the rules of which are free to download from Zenit Miniatures website, and it's basically a game that's set in a kind of fantasy era, but very much with a historical Japanese theme to it. So it's not set in Japan, it's set in a kind of mythical world that replicates medieval Japan, but the human figures in it could all very easily be used for historical wargaming, and I happen to think they're particularly good figures. So I've got a fair number of them now, not a vast number, but they fit in with other figures I've got very well, and it's a pity really that people don't seem to be aware of them, because they are suitable for historical wargaming. So you can buy the figures in a variety of packages. Basically, they're packaged to suit the rules. So you have, in the game, you have quite a lot of individual characters. So these two figures both came in individual blisters, and they are. There is a sort of a small amount of assembly you have to do. Usually, it involves just gluing arms on. Sometimes it's a bit more complicated than that. So the chap on the right there is a Kenzai, is a sort of dueling master, and the chap on the right, on the left rather, is a Kengo, who is a duelist. And similar to that, I also have a figure that I painted some time ago. To that guy in the middle there, who is another Kenzai who came in an individual pack. They do an awful lot of samurai figures. I haven't got any of them, and that's mainly because I wargame sort of two separate periods really for Japanese history or samurai history. My kind of skirmish games, if you will, are set in this kind of later period, the Sengoku Jidai kind of period. And I've got some armoured samurai for that, but I've got all I need, and I didn't really want to buy any more. But I can assure you that the figures that Zenit do are really beautiful and worth taking a look at. The only time I've ever seen them reviewed on YouTube was the Solo Wargaming channel. He reviewed a box of their mounted samurai figures, and the horses in particular had a fantastic amount of motion in the sculpts. The downside of them being that, like the foot figures, they do need some assembly, and the horse is in two parts really. You put the head and shoulders and the right hand side of the horse is one piece, and then the left hand piece is the other legs and shoulders, and you do end up with a very noticeable gap that you would have to fill, but that really is a small price to pay, because the actual dynamism of the figures is really remarkable, which is a feature I think of these figures, that they do have very realistic poses and so on. So basically what I'm trying to say is that although the armoured figures are very nice indeed, I haven't got any of them. But what I have got to show you is some Ninja. So you can either buy individual figures. So this is I think is a Shinobi, comes in an individual blister. But there is also a box of Ninja, which is these guys here. They come with a variety of weapons, swords and katanas and flails and things like that. And to give you an idea of size, I've got out in the front there, that's a Perry figure, Perry Ninja. So you can see that they're really compatible in terms of size. That gives you an idea. But on top of all that, the thing that I really like about this range of figures is that I'm not a huge devotee of fantasy games, but they do lots and lots of mythical Japanese figures, and again they are accurate in their depiction of the figures, in that they haven't invented new creatures for the game, for this fantasy game of Kenzai. They have produced figures that represent what you might describe as genuine Japanese mythical creatures. See, let's put a figure back so you can see the difference in scale there. So this chap comes in an individual box, and he is an Oni. So they have different kind of groups of creatures. The Oni comes under the description of a hell creature. The one thing I would regret about this figure is that I chose to paint him in a kind of similar skin colour, at least, to the artwork on the box. But most Japanese Oni that you see portrayed in art and so on have either got very red skin or very blue skin. In fact, I visited a very famous site in Japan called, I forget its Japanese name, but it's known as Hell Valley. It's at one end of at one end of it is a spa called Nabori Betsu Onsen, and in the spa, as you walk up to the Hell Valley, which is a huge kind of smoking, sulphurous volcanic valley, there are two Oni in sculpture. I'll try and scan in an old photograph that I took of them. So this grey kind of colouring to the skin isn't really very accurate, but these sort of figures are ideal for adding into a daisho. In particular, has lots of rules for mythical and fantasy figures from Japanese history, so it's ideal for that. In particular, this is a sort of tree creature. Let's find out his name from the artwork on the box. He is Dai Darabochi. That's his box. He came in quite a lot of pieces. It's very heavy, a lot of metal on there. and that did involve quite a lot of milliput and so on to fill in quite a few of the gaps. But he's great. There's lots of character on that figure. Fungi growing on him. There's a squirrel there. I think there's a bird. Yeah, there's a little bird perched on one of his branches. There's some sort of fungus growing out of his limb, and his armour is almost like the green kind of bark, but he's got designs that have been almost like tattoos that have been inscribed into his flesh, as it were. So I think he's great, and I actually painted him up because we were planning to do a scenario from the Daisho rulebook that involved a tree coming to life and pursuing the players off the table. So I thought he was perfect for that. I've got these two guys here. If they are guys, I don't know. These are Tengu, who are sort of, again, straight out of Japanese myth. So these would be as recognisable to a Japanese person as a sort of goblin or a centaur would be to a Westerner. And again, there are rules for these in Daisho. As there are, you can get an unofficial supplement to the rules of Ronin on the Osprey website that give you rules for all these various creatures as well. So the Tengu, they come in a box of 2, and they come under the description of earthly creatures. I've also got a few others. These guys here, I wasn't terribly happy with the way paint came out on them, but I settled for them in the end. And these are water creatures. I need to find... There we go. They came in a blister pack of 3, and they are Kappa. So they live in water, and you run the risk of being dragged into the water and eaten by them if you get close to them. Lots of stories in Japan of children being eaten by Kappa when they were swimming in rivers and so on. They're full of character, but quite small. So they have things like fishing nets kind of trapped on them with floats, sort of glass bottle floats, crowns of shells, I presume they are, and the Kappa themselves have a kind of terrapin-like shell on their back, and sort of beaked faces, a bit like turtles or terrapin. I've also got these 3 little chaps here. And these are sort of miniature oni, if you will. They're called Amano-yaku. And they come in a blister pack of 3 as well. Again, there are rules for them in both Ronin and Daisho. So I think Zenit Miniatures are an interesting and overlooked range, really. If you want to kind of extend your historical gains into fantasy, they're ideal for that. If you want to supplement your historical figures with some really nice additional sculpts, they're ideal for that as well. I've still got in my lead mounting, I've got 3 I still have to paint. There's this chap here who's a spy. You can see it looks like his arm is separate, and there's just 2 pieces really. Maybe there's another arm stuck around the back there. They're based on slotted bases as well, I should have said that. So the base is in there and you just slot the figure into the base. We've also got an assassin. You see, all these figures are ideal for kind of taking part in scenarios in a skirmish game. And finally, I've got another shinobi here. They do 2 types of shinobi. I think the shinobi is a kind of master ninja. So, lost him now. Where did I put him? There's the one that I'd already painted up. And here's another shinobi with a sort of red mask. And that's it. That's all I wanted to do. Show you those. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. And see you on the next video. Bye for now.